Greetings and salutations. Thank you for lending an ear to The Voice of the Times this Tuesday, December 22, 2020. For today's editorial, are the DoH and IATF aware that the PCR test creates false positives? At the rate the health authorities are raining down daily on the nation the unsettling news that thousands more of our people have tested positive for COVID-19, we would like to temper the information overload with this question. Are these officials at least aware that a good number of those who test positive may be actually false positive and that the testing method is unreliable or inaccurate? This has been a long matter of concern and knowledge in the scientific and medical communities. Two early whistleblowers on the false positives were Professor Carl Hannigan, director of Oxford University's Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, and Dr. Michael Yaden, former chief science officer of Pfizer. Both have published in various journals to bring the issue to light. There are other scientists and medical professionals in America and Europe that have discussed the issue. Asia has been comparatively slower in addressing the problem. In an article on the Zero Hedge website on December 20, Tyler Burden reports on and explains the false positive phenomenon. He wrote, "The World Health Organization, or WHO, released a guidance memo on December 14, warning the high cycle thresholds on PCR, or polymerase chain reaction tests, will result in false positives. While this information is accurate, it has also been available for months. So we must ask, why are they reporting it now? Is it to make it appear the recently released vaccines work?" The gold standard SARS-CoV-2 tests are based on reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction. RT-PCR works by taking nucleotides, tiny fragments of DNA or RNA, and replicating them until they become something large enough to identify. The replication is done in cycles, with each cycle doubling the amount of genetic material. The number of cycles it takes to produce something identifiable is known as the cycle threshold, or CT value. The higher the CT value, the less likely you are to be detecting anything significant. This new WHO memo states that using a high CT value to test for the presence of SARS-CoV-2 will result in false positive outcomes. The design principle of RT-PCR means that for patients with high levels of circulating virus or viral load, relatively few cycles will be needed to detect the virus, and thus the CT value will be low. Conversely, when specimens return a high CT value, it means that many cycles were required to detect virus. In some circumstances, the distinction between background noise and actual presence of the target virus is difficult to ascertain. Of course, none of this is news to anyone who has been paying attention. That PCR tests were easily manipulated and potentially highly inaccurate has been one of the oft-repeated battle cries of those of us opposing the pandemic narrative, and the policies it is being used to sell. Many articles have been written about it by many experts in the field, medical journalists and other researchers. It's been commonly available knowledge for months now that any test using a CT value over 35 is potentially meaningless. Dr. Kary Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize for inventing the PCR process, has made clear that it wasn't meant as a diagnostic tool, saying, "With PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody." This has all been public knowledge since the beginning of the lockdown. The Australian government's own website declared that the tests were flawed, and a court in Portugal ruled they were not fit for purpose. It is therefore pertinent to ask why here in the Philippines we persist in using the PCR tests with alacrity. We even have a testing czar at the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases who gets excited when there is an uptick of positives, however false. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara should change her spiel in her daily report on the pandemic situation. She should report from here on how many people have been falsely diagnosed as positive for the virus. And that's the editorial for Tuesday, December 22, 2020. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to our digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and listen to The Voice of the Times.